Hi, I'm Laura Flanders. We've been in Philadelphia all week, the site of rebellion, refuge, revolution, and revolt. It's been super hot in town with lots of action on the convention floor at the Wells Fargo Arena, as well as on the street. And Hillary Clinton made history, indisputably becoming the presidential nominee of the Democratic Party, the first woman. Her opponent, Bernie Sanders, said he gave her his support, but his voters, many of them, made up their own minds, and hundreds chose to walk off the convention floor in protest at what they saw was a rigged process. We're going to talk about continuing the revolution, the people's revolution, and what that's going to take this week on the Laura Flanders Show. Welcome. We're glad you're watching.
And we need a media that covers the movements that create static and make history.
But the story that I love the most is the women's rights movement. When they said to those women, what are you marching in the street for? Do you think you're gonna do a revolution? That's impossible. But guess what? We, combined together with people power, did the impossible.
Also, now we know that Hillary is going to be our nominee for the presidency of the United States of America. I am very, very excited.
We need the first woman president. And I say, yes, we do, and that is Jill Stein.
Forget the lesser evil, fight for the greater good.
When the people are under attack, what do?
Stand up like that!
We have got to elect Hillary Clinton and stay. Brothers and sisters, Trump is a bully and a demagogue. Trump has made bigotry and hatred the cornerstone of his campaign. Election days come and go, but the fight for social, economic, racial, and environmental justice continues.
19 votes for the leader of our revolution, which shall continue.
22 votes for our beloved Senator Sanders.
I vote that Hillary Clinton be selected.
This is grassroots completely, so it's nothing to do with Bernie.
This isn't about Hillary Clinton. This isn't about WikiLeaks or anything like that. This is about the corporate media. We're in the heart of the media. We're at the media tent at the DNC, and this is still not being covered. What does it take in this country to get real issues and to have the values of and the interests of the 99% of the people's revolution reported by the mainstream media?
Has any of what the Sanders campaign brought to the Democratic Party in the way of critique sunk in? Will it make any difference? Here to talk about that is the mayor of Tallahassee, Andrew Gillum. Andrew is an up-and-comer, rising star inside the Democratic Party. Mayor Gillum, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Laura. I appreciate it.
So Andrew, are you feeling it? Are you feeling that the Sanders message or any kind of message of a critique of establishment Democratic Party politics got heard?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, 45% of the delegates on the floor this week are Bernie Sanders delegates. I believe they say that is the highest number of delegates not there for the nominee, the eventual nominee since Jesse Jackson. Pretty extraordinary feat all by itself. Bernie Sanders has had the ability in his supporters of transforming what would have otherwise been a status quo platform. Leaps heads and shoulders different and I think more progressive than obviously what comes from the right. but even on our side, having the ability to push the limits on everything from access to college and debt and loan repayment to tuition and free tuition. To the stances that he's taken and his supporters have taken around healthcare and healthcare reform and trying to push us just a little bit further. I firmly believe that these movements have to be bookended by folks who push us to the edges, who cause those who are in frankly, the safe space to expand their authority. And it requires folks to put the markers further out in order for those of the party that tend to be in the middle to really stretch themselves.
So what happens next? What are you going to be looking for happening next within the party? And then I'm going to ask you about your work.
Yeah, well, I mean, my hope is that one will really listen because this is not going away. The challenges that are showing up in city streets all around the country, and not just the ones that we see broadcast on television, not the ones that the YouTube videos are coming out after. Every single day there are communities and people in communities who are hurting in really deep ways. And the problems that they're suffering from are very nuanced, but they're granular in nature, and they require real intentional planning in order to begin to lift the burden off of some of these communities that have been generationally and intergenerationally plagued by those kinds of problems. So the challenge will remain. Now, whether we can rise to it, will the establishment rise up to those challenges is a different question. It will require us to hold them accountable.
So, final question, have you been changed in any way by this Sanders revolt?
I have. It's created pressure points even in my own city. While I am a mayor, I also came out of organizing on my college campus, rallying against Jeb Bush and the end of affirmative action that he with his signature did. I also carried food into the Florida State Capitol when Dream Defenders were sleeping on the cold marble floors, demanding justice on behalf of Black lives before we heard the terminology Black Lives Matter. But I'm also the titular head of a police department who I have to give support to and encouragement to, but also hold accountable on the other end when things go bad. And it's a very difficult tension that I hold because I have the lived experience of a Black man in America, also raising Black kids. But I also have the lived experience of being a responsible person who's responsible for the resourcing and the outfitting of a law enforcement agency who's charged with the conduct and the production and the safety and all that other stuff of law and order in our own community. And it's challenging. I will admit that.
And the power of money, wasn't that the big message of the Sanders campaign?
There was huge conversation around money, the influence of money in elections. I'm a firm believer that we have to do something drastic on Citizens United, maybe a constitutional amendment if it comes to that, or maybe electing a Congress that's actually responsive to the people. That's an issue that Democrats and Republicans seem to come together on, the over-influence of money in politics and in power. But again, I have a sneaky feeling that that's going to be a long turn. Power sees nothing without a demand, and I think it's going to have to be a bipartisan effort, one that probably comes from the grassroots up demanding change.
Thank you very much.
Thank
From
you.
Frederick Douglass's lips to our guests to your ears. Andrew Gillum is the mayor of Tallahassee. I think we're going to be seeing more of him. Thanks.
240 years ago, Abigail Adams told her husband, the future president, remember the ladies. Remember the ladies. Now, Abigail probably didn't know that those three words, remember the ladies, would be echoed this year, at this moment, in Philadelphia. So let me just say to Abigail, sister, we remember the ladies because the ladies are now here in charge, and ready to elect us.
So here in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, women have been particularly excited, especially Democratic women, about the nomination of Hillary Clinton, the first woman to run for president on a major party ticket. There's history being made here, no question. Is it a history of revolution that will bring everyone? And is it a history of revolution that will really take seriously the importance of sexism? Not just for someone at the top of a ticket, but someone down at the bottom of one? I've got two people with me who have a lot to say about both of these things. Aishah Shahidah Simmons is a writer, filmmaker, blogger, and cultural worker. Nora Lichtash works with the Women's Community Revitalization Project. Welcome both. Glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
So first off, the headlines as we are talking are blaring. Ladies first, woman first, history, her story, every possible permutation of the same. Are you feeling it, Aishah?
It's a surreal moment. I mean, it's a surreal moment coming from another first with Obama. So yeah, I'm feeling it in terms of I'm aware that this is history right before my very eyes.
And what about you, Nora?
I do, and the people I talk to really are feeling it. I think the images of women are so important, and to see someone in that role makes me remember a lot about what I can do as a woman.
Talk a bit about your community. When you say the people you work with, who are you talking about?
I work in North Philadelphia primarily with low-income families, usually women and kids, and that's who's poor in our neighborhood and usually in the city and around the country. So those folks run the organization that I work for.
Also, is that a women's issue? Is that a feminist issue? What's that got to do with sexism?
I think it has a lot to do with sexism. We don't earn as much, and what I see in our community is that people are losing jobs, losing hours since the recession, and are really affected by this recession. There's no moving up and moving out based on this recession for our people.
What do you think, Aishah? How do you come to this?
I mean, I come to this as you've already noted, a filmmaker and culture worker, and have documented specifically violence against women, Black women in communities. And so what I notice is that while we're talking about all of the tremendous inroads that's happening in this historic moment, that I think that women of color, Black women, Indigenous women, Asian women, that we're not included. I mean, it's like this umbrella, but so many of the images, it's still of, or when we talk about these issues, it's still a mainstream kind of issue, mainstream feminism, that we're not talking about the margins of the margins.
Now, you're being kind in a sense. Sometimes mainstream is a euphemism for white.
Okay.
I mean, I will say that looking at the discussion around sexism on the stage of the Democratic National Convention this week, it's been frustrating. I mean, I keep seeing when the topic is feminism or sexism and the evils of the Republican assault on women's rights, the people that speak are all white women.
Yes.
And when the subject is racism or police killing, most of the victims are men, and most of the roles that we see for women of color, Black women specifically, are sort of griever in chief, not to make light of them. But
Black women's voices have been at the forefront of these movements, but yet what gets projected are white women as victims. When we think of rape victims, we don't think of Black, Latina, Asian.
And why does it matter that we change that?
Because if we're really going to stop, if we're going to really end violence against women, all women, and then we have to change our psyche about who gets raped.
And what I'm hearing from you, Nora, is that our image of who is a poor family or head of poor family household maybe needs to change, or who's the breadwinner.
Yeah, it's very clear that in our neighborhood, 80% of those who are poor are families that are headed by women. Women are working very hard, often, sometimes receiving public benefits, but often in numerous minimum wage jobs or just trying to make it.
So with all this history making, people are very excited to be continuing the women's movement this one more step. But last time around, the women's movement didn't bring everybody. It was way too white, and it was way too homophobic. Have we made progress on intersecting gender with race and class and sexuality? Who wants to get at that, Aishah?
I think we've made progress, but not at the level that we need to make it. And again, back to the visibility, speaking as a lesbian, the images of queer people, when we have them, they're white. We don't see queer people of color. And we can look to the leaders of the hashtag Black Lives Matter in terms of that 2 of the 3 women are queer. That queer folks have been at the forefront of so much radical revolutionary change. And that I think that it is always the margins of the margins that free us, right? So of course, queer folks, trans people who are of color who are at the margins, when they get free, we all get free, I believe.
I think that's why it's so exciting to me that people like you and me and a whole lot of us are using the word queer a whole lot more than we used to.
Exactly.
Apart from anything else, it shakes up who we think is family, who we think fits in the house, who we think is part of our community, and whether those people have to fit into a preconceived picture. I don't know whether this comes into your work, but I bet it does.
Yeah, we were denied funding by a pretty major organizing funding source because I'm a lesbian. So those come into the work, and I think that there's so many ways that I've been out of the closet for as long as I've been out for a long time that I think strengthen the work and hamper the work too.
Thank you both. It's been great having you with us. Nora Lichtash is with the Women's Community Revitalization Project, and you can find Aishah Shahidah Simmons' film, No, at knowtherapedocumentary.org. So how has the international media been looking at our elections? Our friends at Mosaic from Link TV, take a look.
A special report from the 2016 national conventions and a review of the world's reactions to our election. Mosaic compares how these broadcasters around the world are covering the lead up to the November election. Let's begin in Russia at this American-style diner courtesy of Britain's BBC.
There was a survey recently by the YouGov polling agency. It found that in nearly all of the G20 countries, the world's largest economies, from Brazil to China, if people there could vote in an American election, they would vote for Hillary Clinton. There was just one exception to that: Russia. According to the survey, people here would vote for Donald Trump.
Ну, я думаю, Дональд Трамп. Ну, на мой взгляд, по крайней мере, он более честно, открыто себя ведет.
Во-первых, как мужчина, очень интересный. Во-вторых, наверное, мне кажется, он более лояльно как-то к России относится, чем Хиллари Клинтон.
Russia has its own English language channel, RT. They made it clear why Russia loves Trump.
Donald Trump has put forward ideas that no mainstream American politician would dare.
NATO is obsolete. I believe we will have a very good relationship with Russia.
I think I'd get along very well with Vladimir Putin.
Iran's English-language press TV is often critical of the U.S., so it's no surprise that their convention focus was on the protesters.
At least 18 people were arrested during the protests outside the Republican National Convention. This brings to 23 the total number of people arrested during anti-Trump rallies since the convention began on Monday.
France 24 consulted with an expert who says that the U.S. and Europe are more similar than ever before.
Refus de la mondialisation, immigration, anti-globalization, the middle class getting poorer, refusal to be politically correct. These are all topics we know well, European topics. Populism on the right wing, a more radical left, and those trends we can find in each of the candidates.
Let's say China.
There's only one country Trump is famous for obsessing about.
China.
But the candidate that China obsesses about is Clinton.
The United States does not take a position on any territorial claim, but they do not have a right to pursue it through intimidation or coercion.
China has been objecting to a ruling by the International Court in a dispute over the South China Sea, and they blame Hillary Clinton.
On that day, right after Clinton signed the Manila Accord with the Philippines, she used the Philippines' self-made term, West Philippine Sea, when she referred to the South China Sea in her speech.
70% of the Chinese that I surveyed said they would vote for Trump. Only 30-something said they would vote for Hillary. A lot of Chinese really perceive Hillary Clinton to be this aggressive, staunch defender of American interests, even at the cost of campaigning China, hurting China's national interests in South China Sea.
This report from Telesur, a consortium of left-leaning Latin American national broadcasters, made clear that most of these nations are anti-Trump.
They took to the streets of central Cleveland. Here, there are marches, screams, and posters rejecting Donald Trump. They disagree with hate, police abuse, and anti-immigrant rhetoric that the tycoon from New York has promoted. Here, politics are expressed differently, in contrast to what is happening inside the Republican convention.
While the partying went on inside the convention center, Al Jazeera English spoke to some of the disadvantaged citizens of Cleveland.
According to the government, more than 1 in 3 Cleveland residents live below the U.S. poverty line. When it comes to children, more than half do. Of major U.S. cities, only Detroit is poorer. Professor Rob Fisher says events like the convention can boost a city's psyche, and to a modest extent, its coffers, but he fears the plight of Cleveland's poor could go unnoticed.
I fear that during an event like this, our main goal is to make those folks invisible to our guests, that we try to hide, our blemishes.
And in this interview with Trump backer and former candidate Herman Cain, Al Jazeera proved one thing: the argument between the U.S. and the world isn't over.
If I'm an American voter, why wouldn't I go with the candidate who's been Secretary of State, Senator, travel around the world, rather than the real estate developer?
Because she didn't do anything as Secretary of State.
But he says I don't know
He says I don't know the difference. Now, let me ask you this.
Let me ask you the question. No. I'm doing the interview. I'm doing the interview.
You ask this question.
Okay, you ask me a question, then I'll ask you.
So there's been a lot of talk in Philadelphia about this city as a place of revolution. But there's no revolution that this city has been more part of than the revolution against chattel slavery. The fight to assert that people mean more than profits is a fight in which all progressive forces could and should agree. But it's a long and unfinished revolution. We're in a place that's been at the very heart of it.
You're sitting inside the fourth building of Mother Bethel. We've been on this property for more than 200 years. This is the oldest piece of land continuously held by African Americans. Oftentimes visitors walk in and they see it and they ask us who we bought it from, because obviously people don't think that black people in the 1800s could have built this building, but this was indeed built in 1889. Again, this is the fourth building, and it has pretty much looked like this ever since 1889.
What does today's political movement, all of them, need to learn from this movement that had so much of its heart in this church?
Yeah, well, so I mean, think about Philadelphia. It's a place of contradictions. So we're the place that teaches the world about revolution and empowering people, and yet in Philadelphia today, you're talking about things that hold people back. We have no elected school board. So we have a 5-person appointed board that oversees all of the education for 1.5 million people. And so there's a lot of, righteous anger in this city around issues that we think really continue that revolution from way back then.
If you could channel Richard Allen and his wife,
oh yeah,
the co-founders of this place, from the 1790s, under segregation, under slavery, in a new nation, what would he say to us in this moment? So many people with so many aspirations, wanting to make so much change and all of it needed. What would he say? What would they say?
Well, I think Richard Allen would say you have to keep fighting. That, it's, as I've been saying to some of my younger colleagues who are in the streets, who are protesting and demonstrating, one of the things that marks this movement today, Black Lives Matter, and a lot of the other progressive movements, I think, is there's not as much reliance on spirituality or people's professed faith, and I think that it can sometimes shape you in the wrong way. What informs me is that as pessimistic as the times may seem, that people like Richard Allen and Sarah Allen and Jarena Lee, first woman preacher who preached in this, on this land in the second building, that, faith is the part that says that even in the darkest times, when it looks like slavery will never end, that someone every night prayed that slavery would end, and that they would tell you that it was not just the Civil War that ended it, but that it was their faith in action that brought it to an end. Jim Crow segregation, the same thing, and that every advance that we've made, it has been, in my opinion, a co-laboring of our spirituality and our faith that undergirds us, Christians, Jews, Muslims, and others, as well as the activism that is also needed. And so it's easy to get pessimistic and think things will never change if you don't believe in anything outside yourself. But I believe in something that is unseen.
The old African slogan, what is it? When you pray, move your feet.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Reverend Tyler. Really a
Sure.
pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you for letting us be in your beautiful, incredible Mother Bethel Church in Philadelphia.
Thank you.
From Mother Bethel in Philadelphia. That's it for the Laura Flanders Show this week. When you pray, move your feet.